I got a couple of cool things to talk about today if we fall behind on topics to talk about, one of which is the possible attempt to preserve media. So as you all know, I'm a very big proponent of physical media. I always love to show love and support to projects that main goal is preserving it. For example, I always send people, if they're Star Wars fans, to things like Project 4K 77, 4K 80, these fans who on their own are hunting down, finding 35mm prints, 16mm prints, pretty much any edition of the original Star Wars films, and are digitizing them to preserve them in their original form before George Lucas came in and changed everything. And since we live now in an age of censorship, we live now in an age where so many people are trying to shut movies down, erase films from existence. Really, honestly, I think that we're not too far off, at least in certain areas of the culture, especially if you're up in the Seattle area, of people starting to try and burn books, burn movies. And I would say the equivalent of that at the major level, at least at the major studio level, would be, hey, we're just going to throw all of these films into a vault and they're never going to see the light of day again. So now is, I think, more important time than ever to find those films that might, by today's standards, be seen as quote-unquote problematic, buy them and preserve them. And one of the ways that I've been preserving them is that once I buy a Blu-ray, what I do is I use something called Make MKV, and it turns it into a digital file. I own the movie, and so therefore me digitizing it is not, even though they might try and push and say that it is illegal, it's like, no, it's not at all. If I own the film and all I'm doing is digitizing it for my own consumption, then there's nothing wrong with that. I bought and paid for the film with my own funds, therefore I own the ability to watch it in the way that I see fit. So that's one way that I preserve it, is by digitizing it. I've come to find out, though, that there's actually something that could potentially, by using that mindset, right, by using that era of digitization of media, to actually preserve even more so the films that have already been released. As if you've been following my channel and many other channels for a while now, you know there's been a lot of controversy recently because of HBO Max, and HBO Max taking off Gone with the Wind. And specifically, they took Gone with the Wind off so that they could then repost the film, only now, before the movie would start, they would have a little trigger warning explaining, oh, it's a film of its time period, be warned, again, giving that trigger warning, and now also apparently putting in a short film, again, I don't know how long it would be, a short video, of a professor explaining the history of the film beforehand. And if this was a typical, Turner Classic Movies, hey, we're going to go into, some information about who was involved or talk about some of the movie history of the production, that would be cool. But the sole purpose of them taking it off to re-put it back on is basically to try and educate people as, this is why this film is problematic. And I know for me personally, I don't got time for that. And I don't put up with that nonsense. So I own the film. When I got my 50-film Warner Brothers collection set several years back, one of the films on there is indeed Gone with the Wind. Doesn't have a trigger warning. Doesn't have any little documentary beforehand to try and explain why it's problematic. It's almost like studios can't imagine that we could think for ourselves and figure things out for ourselves and see a movie from the 1930s and not realize, this was a different time in history. And also the fact that the film itself is set during the Reconstruction era after the Civil War, that somehow we can't make that connection. It's ridiculous. They think that we're idiots. And the reason why I'm so passionate about speaking up against this is to show them, no, we're not. And we will fight against you. But anyway, so I digitize my films. They're trying to silence and destroy films. People are trying to buy their own copies of Gone with the Wind, and it's essentially sold out. And who knows if Warner Brothers is going to be putting out any more editions of the film that haven't already been printed. There is obviously a scenario, and some people might say this is obscure, but I honestly believe that there is a scenario, that there is a situation where you could potentially see them trying to take films out of circulation. And with that in mind, I have discovered a way of potentially being able to take the movies that I have, copy them, and be able to make copies for others. Now, trust me, the legality of this is definitely on the line. My plan is not to, I'm just going to make a bunch of bootleg copies and then sell them, right? That's obviously completely illegal, and I would never do that. But to digitize it and to preserve it, and if it comes to pass that someone can't access it because the studio has decided that they don't want the film to be distributed anymore, or that they hard code on some random piece of propaganda onto the film and therefore alters it in some way, or if they just go into the film after the fact and alter certain things in some way, having the ability to not only have the official film, but also to be able to make that official film for others is a pretty cool thing. So I'm actually playing around with that right now. I actually ran out of Blu-ray discs because, as you all know, I give away the Star Wars Despecialized editions on Blu-ray to people that win. Finally ran out of those discs, so I did order some more Blu-rays, but they're getting pretty expensive. And so if you watch the channel and you support the channel and you want to help to support, buying more blank Blu-rays and buying more discs and being able to pay for postage and things like that, things that you wouldn't think about supporting the channel through Patreon, Subscribestar. There's a PayPal link as well. Any way possible. You could even say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just buy you the Blu-rays and send them your way. That works too. You don't have to. As I've mentioned constantly, just you watching, sharing, following here on Twitch, spreading the word is more than enough. But if you can, it really does help out a lot, because my plan is to try at least one, and then potentially say, hey, anyone that does not have access to this film, let me know. Wink, wink, allegedly. Because I want to make sure that this film stays preserved. I want to make sure that everyone has access to this film and that no studio is able to take that away from anyone. And now a huge shout out to all of my June Patreon members: Albertus Magnus, Animation Commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Intertrap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Laura Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Benton, Tina Bojan, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And also to my Subscribestar members: Edgardo Martinez, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod, the Beer Guru, and also Nebanon G. Adams and ZK Man, and Jonathan Carney, and Jacob Juice. Thank you all so much for being a member of Patreon and Subscribestar. And seriously, it really does mean a lot. Helps keeps the light on, helps me able to do things like the giveaways for my $5 and up backers on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also be able to put more stuff into the actual channel itself, including upgrading different components, whether it be webcams, microphones, things like that. All of that helps to support it, and it really does mean a lot. So thank you all so very much. Please, if you want to have your name shouted out or look at any of the other perks, which include things like, indeed, having access to exclusive 4K digital giveaways every single month, and also an exclusive podcast hosted on Patreon and Subscribestar, and also YouTube memberships as well at the $10 and up level, featuring John the Flickpig Flickinger. Please check all of those things out in the description of this video. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.